Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make these button-up pajamas for your stuffed animal. I know you have all been waiting and requesting this throughout the year, so let's get started! The first thing to do, of course, is cut out all my pieces. So here I have my patterns that I will link down below, and I just need to cut them out. I'll need 2 of each one except for this big shirt piece. I'm using flannel fabric for this, and to choose the print, I actually had you all vote on Instagram and YouTube. And the votes were actually really close for all of them, but I ended up going with choice number 4, which was this polar bear one. I wish I had an actual polar bear stuffed animal to wear this, but all the polar bears I have are in the sitting position, so that would require a different pattern. You can still make pajamas for them too though. Just check out my How to Make Patterns for a 4-Legged Stuffed Animal video. When cutting out piece number 2 for the top and piece number 1 for the pants, I like to just fold my fabric in half and then cut it out at the same time. That way the pieces are mirror images of each other, which is what you want. Once I have all my pieces cut out, I'm going to start with the button-up pajama top. So I'm going to start by hemming the bottom edges of the shirt pieces. I'm just folding up the edge a little bit and pinning it down. And I'm going to also fold in the inner sides of the front pieces. I'm going to use a straight stitch to sew those in place. After that, I need to hem the neckline of the front pieces. So before doing that, I'm just making some cuts around the curve to make it easier to fold over. Then I can just sew those down. Next, I'm going to grab that back piece and flip those front pieces good side to good side with it, lining up those shoulder parts. It's okay if the necklines don't really match up because we did not hem the neckline of the back piece. Next, I'm going to sew straight across the tops to connect them. After that, I can set that aside and start working on the sleeves. And of course, before sewing these on, I'm going to hem them. So I'm folding up that bottom edge and pinning it in place. And after sewing that edge over, we can connect it to the main shirt piece. So I'm opening up that shirt piece with the good side facing up, then flipping the sleeves good side to good side on top of that, lining up the curves. Then I can pin the curves together. I usually start in the center because I know there's sometimes extra on the ends. And once I've done that to both sleeves, I'm just going to sew along where I've pinned. After that, I'm going to set this aside and start working on the collar. Before doing any sewing, I'm actually going to take one of the collar pieces and trim along that inner curve. I'm trimming off a little bit less than 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to match this up with the other piece good side to good side, lining up those bigger curves and pinning them together. I'm now going to sew the 2 pieces together around the perimeter except for that inner curve. Then I can turn the collar inside out, and I'm just making sure to poke out those edges. And one more thing I'm going to do before sewing this on is do a zigzag stitch along this raw edge sticking out. And I just like doing a little zigzag stitch here because that'll seal in those frayed edges. After that, it should look like this, and now we're ready to add it onto our shirt. With the wider part of the collar on top, I'm placing that on the neckline of the shirt, then folding over that edge, which is only 1 layer fabric. I'm putting this about 1/2 inch away from the inner sides of the shirt, because it's eventually going to have to button up in the center and I don't want the ends of the collar overlapping. As I was getting towards the end though, I realized the collar was not long enough to wrap around the entire neckline, so I had no other choice than to completely remake the collar and just make it longer. Don't worry though, I adjusted the printable patterns so the collar should be the right size, so hopefully you don't have to do this again. Once you get to the end, you might see the collar doesn't match up perfectly where you want it to end. So once you get to this point, you can shorten the collar as much as you want just by sewing in a little bit more. Then you can turn it inside out again and pin on the rest. My remade collar was the perfect size, so now all I have to do is sew along where I've pinned. And after that, it is looking great. Now I'm just going to fold it in half good side to good side and pin together the bottoms of the sleeves and the sides of the shirt. Then, as always, I'm going to use a straight stitch to sew in an upside down L shape to close it up. And after that, I can trim off any extra fabric and turn it inside out. Now the last thing I'm going to do for this pajama top is deal with the buttons. Before I attach the buttons, I'm going to sew on the buttonholes. I'm first overlapping the front pieces and adding some pins where I plan for the buttons to go. And this is just so I have a general idea where I want to put the buttonholes. Now I'm going to use the buttonhole foot on my sewing machine to sew on those buttonholes. After that, mine looked like this. And I still have to cut the holes out, so I'm folding the buttonhole in half vertically, then just using scissors to make a tiny cut, and then using a seam ripper to cut through the rest. After that, we can finally sew on our buttons. I've already grabbed my buttons and thread, and I like to first overlap the sides with the buttonhole side on top, then insert my needle through the back and through that buttonhole. Then I can separate the sides, and I have exactly where my button needs to go. Now I can insert my first button through the needle, and then just go back and forth between the two holes to sew it in place. Then I'm going to lock my stitch off in the back, and repeat that for the other two buttons. After sewing all the buttons on, your pajama top is finally done! We're still missing matching bottoms though, so I'm going to quickly go through how to make some pajama pants. I have two big pieces for this, and the first thing to do is hem the bottom edge, so I'm folding that over, pinning it in place, and sewing that down with a straight stitch. And I'm of course doing this to both pieces. After that, I need to flip them good side to good side, and you should notice the pieces aren't completely symmetrical. One of the curves kind of cuts deeper into the piece than the other, so right now I'm just going to sew together the curve that doesn't go in as deep. It actually doesn't really matter which one you do first, you'll just want to make sure the deeper curve ends up as the back of the pajamas. After sewing just one of the curves together, I'm going to open the pants up and make a large fold along the top edge. Just make sure it's wide enough to eventually fit in your elastic. After pinning and sewing that down, I'm grabbing my piece of elastic, which I've cut to about 15.5 inches, and I've already added this little safety pin which will help me move it through the pants. As you can see, I'm pushing the fabric around the safety pin, then pulling it down, and then just continuing to do that till I get to the other side. Instead of elastic, you can always use ribbon, which is what I did for my last pajama video, so make sure to watch that for instructions on how to use ribbon. After getting to the other side, I'm going to fold the whole piece in half, good side to good side, and next I'm going to sew together the curves, locking in that elastic at the top. After that, I can remove my safety pin and trim off the extra elastic. Then I'm going to kind of fold the center outwards, so the curves end up in the middle. Then I can match up those open parts and pin them together. Then I'm going to sew where I've pinned to close up the pants. And after that, you can turn the pants inside out and your pajamas are done! Now I can finally try this on, and I'll admit that I made the neckline a little bit too big, so I'll definitely adjust that for the patterns. But other than that, I think it's looking really cute and perfect for the winter season. While filming the intro and outro for this, I accidentally caught something funny on camera, so I'm going to include that at the end for a blooper, so make sure to watch to the very end. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Bye! No!